Are we live?
Fellas!
Hi.
Let's see now. Let's get some levels.
Boogers.
Ooh, my God.
Boogers. How's the isolation there?
Yeah,
buddy?
lots of P's on these mics.
P's.
P's and T's. PST.
Watch your P's and P's.
That's right. How are you guys doing? How's it sound out there? Let me give you a... Can I plug into this real quick?
It's just on standby.
No, but I don't have a... Oh, it is.
It is.
Never mind.
I did that for you.
Where'd my pick go? I just set it down.
It was right there.
I know.
You want that pick?
Oh, there it is.
You gonna be picky about the pick?
Picky pick. Wow, I'm just killing the moo-boo. Hang on a second.
Maybe turn on the output of the comp. I can do that if you want. It's an easy fix.
You know what? Can you just take the master on the amp, which is the third
Turn
knob
it
there, just down
which
a little
way?
bit? Counterclockwise. That's great. Getting a lot of oh, it's that. I'm getting a lot of compression on something. It's okay.
Wait, no, you won't hear that in the headphones.
Oh, maybe it's just this. It's funny with
What's
these.
the vocal mics? Now you can hear it because you got those enclosed headphones on.
Right, now I'm hearing all the compression.
Now
That's
you're
what it
hearing
is.
everything.
I know.
If you take those off, put the AKGs on.
It'll sound normal.
You'll hear all the room.
Yeah. Wow, these are good headphones. Hi, ladies and
They're
gentlemen.
made for. Oh, hi.
Mark Mongeau, hey, what's going on? Dave Keene, yeah, I do like this guitar. It's very cool. It's very hot and fun. And you know what I'm really excited about is my new Strat is almost done from Andy Elliott. And Ron Ellis made me the first hot humbucker that he's ever made. And to give you Ron Ellis's level of analysis, he's talking with Andy and saying, bring out the dancing girls. Hey, Andy's here, Elliott Guitars. Or is that Jason? So Ron is calling the guys over at Elliott and going, all right, so what kind of wood's on the body? You know, I'm going to tune it for this, and what kind of wood's on the neck, and what kind of fret wire are you using, and blah, 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 blah. Hey, Jason. And so this is Ron Ellis's level of analysis. So he's getting me, this is an intentionally hot sort of 80s sounding humbucker. These guys are recreating a guitar from my past for me because they're just the coolest, sweetest guys in the world.
That's what you do when you're our age.
That's right. Well, I had this really cool Strat. I had this really cool. I think I told you about this. Hey, let's start with. Let's be correct here. So it's December 17th, 2014.
It's December 7th. I'm late.
It's a day that'll live in infamy that I screwed up the date on the show. So December 17th, 2014. I'm gonna have to make your mic just a hair hotter because you're a little further away.
I'll lean in when it's for real.
Okay, and we're here at Tone Merchants in North Hollywood, California, courtesy of Dave Friedman, Rob Navarrete, and John Shanks. Thank you very much. And I have the distinct honor of sharing with you guys today one of my dear friends, Tom Abraham.
Hi, everybody.
I met Tom through our mutual friend. Can I say his name?
Yeah, you can say sure. Unless we're going to slag him off here in a minute.
No, we're not going to do that.
Okay.
We're gentlemen. We met him through our mutual friend, Keith Urban. And Tom is one of the most worldly renowned front of house sound guys and has played ran front of house sound at every giant venue in the world for some of the largest bands in the world. And Tom was watching the show about 6 weeks ago when I made the joke of, hey, does anyone have a little analog mixer that I could use for the show? And suddenly my phone lights up after the show, and he goes, hey, it's Tom. What's up, man? Hey, I'm in Vegas. I got a garage full of gear that I'm not using. Why don't I come over and hook you up? And I thought, that's crazy. You know, that's like, hey, I'm going to have Mario Andretti come over and tune out my Chevy.
Oh, was that bored.
And he was that bored. So what does Tom do? He calls up Heil Mics. He gets some promo gear, which we're proudly using. Heil here and Heil on the thing. He loads up his car from Vegas and drives over. And then I just think he's going to bring me some gear. We're going to have coffee and lunch and hang out. He proceeds to rig up the whole room and get me 2 levels of compression, which I'll have him explain here. Got everything all loomed and beautifully and zip tied, and it's a repeatable, neat, tidy rig that sounds so much better. And
Well, at least now you kind of know what's going on.
at least now I have a clue.
Right. Yeah, right.
And anyway, he's just one of those guys that I'm really proud to know and honored that he's my friend. And I wanted to share Tom with you guys.
That sounds dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a small fee. Never mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, Tom Abraham.
Hi.
Yay. Can I get some typing applause on the chat window, please?
I've been watching the show almost since you started.
Yeah, I'm up to
Since
3 years right
yeah.
now. It's been 3 years.
Is it really? It seems like it's been longer.
No, 3
Like
years.
when you used to do it from your office on Van Owen.
Right, November
Yeah.
2011 is when
Yeah.
we started.
I must have caught it right when you started.
Yeah, well, you know what it was? The very first show, I was just messing around on the internet. Look at all these claps you get here. Very nice.
Yay.
And
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
I was messing around and I was just Googling live internet broadcasting, and I ran into Ustream, and I signed up, and I went on to Facebook, and I said, hey, I'm going to try this thing in like 20 minutes. Can you guys follow this link? Just tell me what you think.
Yeah.
And I did it, and like 20 guys logged on.
Right.
And all I did was like, hey, fellas, what you doing? You know, and then all these people logging, they're all chatting with me, and immediately the light bulb went off over my head of like, wow.
I think I found it because I was shopping for a 65, and I think I was just trying to find like a video demo or something, and I think that's how I found it.
Sure, that's how a lot of
Because
people
I
come
think-
to us. Yeah.
I probably actually saw it after you posted it on YouTube,
Yeah.
and then realized that you were actually at some points doing it live, because then sometimes I would log in live.
Yeah, you logged in a lot.
Yeah.
When you're
And-
not on the road,
Yeah.
I see you on there.
Yeah, but if I'm sitting at home, I always do.
Love you for it. Mean it.
Aw.
Oh, that's
Pugs.
sweet. I know. But so Freebird Wagster says we'll save that one for when we have time. The minute we have a free time, we'll play Freebird.
I can play the bird right now if you want.
No, I mean when we have time for it,
Okay.
which will be never.
All 17 minutes of
It'll
it?
be never.
Yeah.
But when we do have time, we'll do it.
Yeah.
It's like I always say, when I have extra money, you can have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When I've got extra money, you can do it.
So, guys, if you got questions, anything audio related, I'm a guitar nerd, but I'm definitely an engineer first.
And there's no better guy. I mean, you guys are getting behind the curtains access right here. This is the guy that the top people in the business turn to and go, Tom, how should we do this? Tom, what do you think? What's the best way to make me sound great? And I've watched Tom, mix at shows at the biggest places in the world. And he goes, first off, let's talk about that for a second. Can you give us sort of the quick and dirty high-level list of the people that you've worked for?
I'll go in reverse chronological order because it's easy to remember. But I've spent the last three and a half years doing Keith Urban.
Right, which is a big show.
And
with a lot of mess on stage, you got to deal with 3 guitar players.
there's a lot of stuff going on.
And Keith plays louder than sin.
Yep, there's some challenges for sure.
And you
but
got to
that's
make
what we do.
You got to make everything sound good.
Yeah, and I spent a long time with Alice in Chains, and I'll just kind of list the stuff that was more long-term projects.
Right.
But like Keith Urban, Alice in Chains, Velvet Revolver, Marilyn Manson. I worked for Garbage for a really long time.
Right.
Like I think 98 to 2005, which took a lot of time.
Yeah.
Did Shakira and I said Velvet Revolver, Rage Against the
I'm
Machine.
going to turn our vocals up here really quick.
Rock and roll.
So, okay, Garbage, Velvet Revolver, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica.
Alice. I was second engineer on Metallica for a while, on and off for about 6 years.
Yeah, Alice in Chains to Keith Urban. So that's a pretty wide net of things you got to do. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
Garbage, power pop, pop, 90s kind of power pop stuff.
It's all loud guitar to me, buddy.
It's all loud guitar to you. Yeah, it's just making vocal mics work in front of loud
Yeah,
guitars.
that's what I do.
You've got the magic touch. Good question here, Mark. We'll get to you in a second. So, how does one climb up the ladder to this level? Like when you start out and say, "Hey, I'm interested in making bands sound good," what's the pathway?
Well, I mean, every time I do an audio centric interview, everyone always asks that question. And it's not that different than being a musician. A lot of it's luck and like being in the right place at the right time. I started at a time when, the bar music scene was a lot more vibrant. And but
there's an element of that. The harder the work, the luckier I get.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, throughout college and going into a normal job right after college, I was always mixing local bands back where I lived, which was upstate New York. Mm-hmm. And it was a great club, and we did all the touring bands that were doing clubs during that time.
All the guys that came through.
Yeah, and I became the house engineer. I mean, I used to load gear in and out of that club, and eventually, not too far long after that, it wasn't too hard to climb up the ladder there.
Right,
but
sure.
I became the house engineer at the club. And also, that guy at the club also had a different PA that was in the back of an old Penske truck or whatever.
Yeah, right.
That if a band needed a PA out on the road locally, I would drive the truck and whatever. And the whole time I was working at General Electric 9 to 5 as well.
Wow.
So I'd leave work at 5 and go right to the club and, go to bed at 3 in the morning because the club was open till 2.
Right.
And for 3 years I did that. Wow. But I was having fun.
Sure.
And I was young and I had the energy.
So what was the first big gig that presented
What
itself to you?
happened? I mean, how did this happen?
Well, I mean, you're mixing in clubs and you're doing your thing, and then an opportunity arises.
Yeah, what happened was most guitar players, so if you watch the show, you probably know who Vinnie Moore is. Who's, one of those, do you know who Vinnie Moore is?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a guitar player, you're going to know who Vinnie Moore is.
Especially a guitar player of a certain age.
Yeah, and I think Vinnie plays with UFO now. But anyway, there was a famous band from upstate New York called the Good Rats.
Somebody's asking where in New York? Is it
Syracuse, New York, yeah. Called the Good Rats. And their manager managed Vinnie Moore. And I did Vinnie Moore at the club I was working at. And the manager, who lived in Rochester, New York, was only 70 miles away, came to the show. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "Hey, I thought the show sounded good. We're going to do this tour of the Mid-Atlantic area. Would you like to go do the tour?" He didn't know I had a regular job.
Right.
He just thought I worked at the club,
Sure.
right? I'm like, "Sure, yeah," without knowing how I was going to get out of work.
Right.
So basically I took
you made the leap.
Yeah, I took my 10 or 14 days of vacation, really quick. And and strangely enough, me and one of the other guys from the club got in the front of a rental truck, put their backline on it, and we played all the clubs around the Northeast. And it was fine, and it was fun, and whatever.
Yeah.
We did. He did lights, I did front of house. We did everything.
Yeah.
There was only 2 of us. And
that's great.
the guy that managed Vinnie Moore, and I'll give him credit, his name was Pete Morticelli. And I always wonder what happened to Pete, but thank you, Pete. Because without you, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
He knew. He said, "Hey, I'm friends with this guy in New York, and they have real bands, and I'll tell him you did a good job." And, of course, I was already, 21 and jaded. I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, dude." Literally, the next day, my phone rings, and 2 days later, I was doing monitors for Dokken.
Like you do.
And that guy was Q Prime Management. If you don't know who that was,
Yeah.
Q Prime Management at the time was...
They were giant.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It was Metallica, Tesla, Queensryche, Def Leppard.
All the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I can't even
things.
the list every band I worked for: Suicidal Tendencies, Infectious Grooves, and I actually ended up working for all those bands, not as front of house at that time.
Yeah.
Some of them as front of house, not all of them.
Yeah, a mixture.
Some was just flying PA or doing monitors or whatever. Right. This is very young, and so basically, I went from the club to the Monsters of Rock tour that quick.
Wow.
Because Pete made a phone call, and for up until I worked for Garbage for 10 years, I did only Q Prime bands because their bands were so big and so busy.
Yeah.
And that's how it happened.
Wow.
So when I took that vacation, I never actually went back to work. The vacation turned into quitting.
I did that my first semester of college. I took a semester off for 9 years.
Yeah.
When an opportunity arises, you take it.
Yeah, and also, but it was born of not saying no to anything from when I was out of high school till about 22 or 23 years old.
Yeah.
I did every dirty, horrible thing
Everything
you could do.
right?
Yeah. And I wouldn't have been able to just jump into a huge gig without having already been kind of beat down a little bit for
Sure.
not a little bit, a lot of it.
So let's jump back and forth here really quick because there's guys asking a lot of technical questions.
Oh, yeah.
And
Go
then
ahead.
we'll intersperse it with stories.
Can you edit them? Because my old man eyes are having a little trouble seeing that.
Just ordered a Cascade Fathead 2. Any tips on cab mic placement?
Well, you know what? Let me get a little tip about the Cascades, which are amazing mics for the money. For the ribbon mics, what I always do, I always like ribbons on a guitar right in the middle, right in the center, like the thing you don't do with a 57. I put it dead center. I like ribbons dead center on a guitar. That's just me.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, there's something you can buy, and I actually think Cascade sells this like in a little package. It's the thing called the Cloud Lifter.
Oh, I know that.
And my God, does that thing, it's not a subtle difference, man. You know, you could put that Cascade up against things that are way more expensive with a Cloud Lifter, and you'll be really happy you bought the Cascade.
I've heard
and that goes
yeah.
for SM7s, SM50. It goes for any mic that's not phantom powered.
Right.
That Cloud Lifter is amazing. And it's not so much the gain thing. You can make anything louder. I think, I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of it because I don't even really understand it, but I think it's basically impedance matching,
Right.
which just makes
The signal fly.
the signal that that the microphone sees
Right.
so receptive to the microphone.
Yeah, yeah.
And we did this on Keith Urban because we had a stereo ribbon for the overhead mics on the drums, and we put a Cloud Lifter on it. We had an active Royer ribbon, and for backups, because the active Royer ribbon was so expensive,
Yeah.
for backups we had the passive Royer stereo mic ribbon
Right.
with a Cloud Lifter. And the only reason we had the Cloud Lifter is so during the show, if we had to change it really quick, it would come at you about the same level.
Yeah, sure.
Because of 20 dB boost with
It
the Cloud
normalized
Lifter.
it. Yeah, right.
Well, we had to change. We got to Australia like this past June, and we had to change out the ribbon mic to the passive ones because in shipping or something, it went haywire or whatever. And the passive ribbon mics with the Cloud Lifter sounded better. And we never went back.
Yeah.
And then we started putting the Cloud Lifter like everywhere.
That's very
And
cool.
so the Cloud Lifter, I think, is probably actually more money than the actual microphone. I actually think a one-channel Cloud Lifter is maybe $100 or something.
They're not that bad.
Yeah, and the stereo one is
Yeah.
twice that.
Right.
But the Cascade is a great mic for the money, and get a Cloud Lifter when you can afford it to go with that, and you won't ever feel the need to buy a more expensive ribbon. That's my belief.
What if you put the Cloud Lifter on a more expensive ribbon?
I have never done it. Well, I've done it in a way. I just said I did it.
Like my 122V here. You
well-
think it would liven it up?
You can't do it because it's active.
Oh, I see.
It's a 5-pin.
It's a tube mic, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
you have to have that.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of doing that already.
It's, okay,
But like if you
similar
were to put
thing,
it on
yeah.
any one of these mics or the Heil mic,
Right.
oh, you would hear it for sure. And it's
Really?
the Cloud Liver gives the Cloud Liver. I have
Liver?
Cloud Liver.
I have goose liver pate right here.
Could we order some Cloud Liver sushi
Yeah,
in a minute?
exactly.
Clown liver.
Oh, boy.
They have it at Circus Liquors. You put a Cloud Lifter in any dynamic, it's amazing. It's not the 20 dB boost.
No.
It's just it like opens the sound of the mic up.
Clarity.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's great to know. There's another guy here who says, I'm playing medium-sized clubs and use plexiglass in front of my amp and a baffle in the back. Wow, you poor guy. I'm either using a London or an AC30 to set them right in the edge of breakup. How can I get my tone consistent from gig to various sound guys?
You mean consistent monitoring?
Gig to gig. it says.
Yeah, I mean, if he's asking me the question, I'm assuming he's talking about what's coming down the mics on his amps, not what's coming out of the amp.
Yeah, no,
Right?
you can get the amp consistent.
Yeah.
He just wants to get whatever he's feeding to the sound guy. to
Yeah,
be
what's
the
the
same.
problem? The problem with plexiglass is that it's so reflective, and if you put cymbals behind plexiglass or guitar amp behind plexiglass, you ever stick your head in there? It's way louder than it was without the plexiglass.
That's right. Nothing gets absorbed.
And so what's happening is a lot of the times
It's just deflection. It's not absorption.
Yeah, it's the sound coming back off the plexi that close is as loud as the sound going in the mic.
Yeah, it's a mirror.
And but it's out of phase.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like you take a ribbon mic that's a figure 8 and put a piece of plexiglass on it. All of a sudden your guitar sounds like it's all scooped out.
Right.
Because you're sending something out of phase right back into the back of the mic.
You're canceling half the signal.
Yeah. So what I always recommend is some people have plexiglass because you can see through it, but if you don't need to see through it for some reason, don't use a hard surface.
Yeah.
Use put foam on the inside of your plexiglass.
I thought about making at one point, tell me if you think it's a good idea, making a sound baffle that looks exactly like the front of my amp.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Or you take
So from a distance, you couldn't tell.
Yeah, I just take a sound baffle that's like 8 Marshall stacks.
Yeah, no, but you're just like the
like the mini Kiss side stacks.
Right.
Yeah.
Special Kiss.
Yeah.
But like to make it the same, with the spindle and the grill cloth, but on the back it's got good sound.
Yeah, it's the same thing with an ISO cabinet. Don't use any isolation that's reflective. That's what I would. That's my answer to that question.
Right. You want the sound to get absorbed.
Yeah, I mean that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
So
let's see, what else? What's the best way, to integrate loops, MIDI sequence instruments, etc., into a live setting in current times, like software, monitors, etc.?
The best software, the most reliable. I mean, I live in this world, and the loops and stuff are the monkey on my back. That's for sure.
Is that an inside monkey?
Monkey on my back is
guitar monkey.
Can't you guys just play without the loops? You know what I mean? Anyway, did I say it out loud?
Anyway,
nobody heard it.
We're in private here.
Yeah, no one heard it.
We're in private.
The best, starting from the beginning, the best software program to actually play the loops, it's very reliable, is Ableton Live. And you will find that any big show, I'm not saying they edited anything or recorded anything in that, but as far as hitting the space bar to hit play during the show is Ableton Live. It's stable as hell. It's really stable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever really seen it screw up.
Right.
The thing with loops is the biggest mistake that's made is that you've taken your studio tracks and you've taken whatever, your stereo pair of drums and your stereo pair of pad, and I call pad anything that's not a drum, keyboards or extra guitar tracks, whatever. And you haven't treated them to use them live. You're just taking the tracks from the studio and then putting them through a PA. Right. And that's a huge mistake because it doesn't work.
Right.
There's just way too much low end. There's way too much high mid.
It's mixed for hi-fi.
Yeah. Right. You have to stop and take the time to get those tracks sonically to sound right with your live band playing. And that's a lot of high passing. It's a lot of high mid removal. It's a lot more probably compression and limiting.
Yeah.
Which you have to do kind of offline before you print it to something that Ableton Live will play.
Right.
So you're probably working in Pro Tools most likely. You want to fix up those tracks in Pro Tools to get them to work live with the band, because you got to be careful. You got a bass guitar player in a big fat drum kit that's mic'd up live. You really don't want a lot of low end content on your tracks. It's going to get really, really messy sounding. And most of what we do, if you have a good band, like when we go into rehearsal, and I have a band that has tracks, which is most of the bands nowadays, most of the time spent is weeding out tracks, what you need and really don't need, and then taking those tracks and almost thinning them out and getting them in their little place.
So they can fit in your live mix.
Just like they're in another instrument.
Right.
And also thinking about what's your whole soundscape when those tracks aren't being played, or if they go away. If there's some songs that use them and some songs that don't use them, you have to think about that, because if your whole show has tracks, that's one thing. If the tracks come on and off, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
So Ableton Live is the best program to use, and it does make a difference to have a nice interface audio quality wise, like an Apogee and RME, or at least a Motu, for audio quality wise, to be able to put it into your patch.
That's right.
And work on the. Don't think your tracks from the studios are gonna translate through a PA, because they're not.
So there's an interesting question here that I think most guys can relate to about power conditioning and power smoothing. Now, so I know when you're out on big shows, you generate your own power for the most part, don't you?
Well, most power will come from the building that has dedicated power for audio and lights, and that you cam lock into.
Right, but don't you? Maybe just like more of the outdoor shows, but like there always seems to be that there's a power station That's not
a lot of
just-
shows there's a generator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, like I know, like over here at the Greek and the Boul. and
Because
Universal
those
stuff.
old buildings didn't have the power that's required nowadays.
Yeah, you need like 443 cycle. Power,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you say bring in a generator for.
Yeah.
A lot of times, audio will come off house power and lighting will come off a generator because the lighting requires so much more power.
Right.
You know.
So, but Haas, who's a gigging musician in England, who's one of my customers, has a smoking band, by the way. He's asking, is it worth the cash or is it snake oil?
Well,
So you're playing in clubs, you never know what you're plugging into, right?
we don't use them at all ever.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer the question?
No, okay.
As long as the voltage is where it should be, every day when the power guy ties in, he meters the voltage to make sure it's within an acceptable range for playing, and then we don't condition it any further than that. If someone has something like that in their rack, or you have a particular piece of gear that's very sensitive to
AC noise.
that, you may have. I mean, just like a Furman type thing that stops a power surge, that doesn't do anything.
Well, you got to be careful with some of those.
I mean,
because
most of them are, unless you're paying some money, most of them
Right.
aren't keeping voltage at a constant level.
right, that's a different thing, right?
Yeah,
because a
that's-
power conditioner is not.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the cheapo rack mount ones, they have circuitry in there to stop a sudden rise. There's no limit on it. It's just if it suddenly changes. So if you got a big amp that's drawing current and you hit a big giant power cord, all of a sudden that amp sucks a ton of juice.
And it's like
it's going to sit on it.
You also got to think about. You'll look at that stuff in the afternoon without the lights on, without the PA blaring, when the
Right.
whole thing goes and all the power goes.
And they turn all the AC units on.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah, to make and all the air conditioning comes on in the building. all
And
that
you
stuff.
drop down to 150.
You could drop
volts.
and like if you run cable down 100 feet of snake, I mean it's 120 at one end and it's 108 at the other end.
Right. I had that happen at a Saturday Night Live. Jared Scharf plays our stuff on Saturday Night Live, has for 5 years now. And he called me. He goes, man, the weirdest thing happened. Like, we did rehearsal this afternoon. Everything sounded perfect. It was summer in New York.
Yeah.
Everything sounded just beautiful. And then we did the dress, because they run the whole show with a different audience. And then they shuffle them out, bring a new audience in, and run it over again. And as soon as the audience came in, my amp was sagging and browning out. I said, do me a favor, have Speedy go over there and measure what you're getting. And he goes, oh, dude, it's like 112 volts. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, it's starting to. So then the next day, they went in there and measured 122. And he goes, oh, the amp sounded perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, what's happening is the audience comes in, they turn all the lights up, they turn on the air conditioners.
For sure.
Because that room is like an oven now with 300 lights on.
Yeah.
They're turning all the cooling units on, and your voltage is dropping. So they hooked him up with a direct power supply. All of a sudden, now everything sounds good.
Yeah, I mean to answer his question directly, you have to have one that maintains a constant voltage, like a proper variac.
Yeah.
Where you're going to turn it up. I want this to be 120 every day.
It's got a meter on it. You set it.
If you have an amp that's sensitive to that, yeah, for sure it makes a difference.
Right.
I
I always found that, especially when you're playing in more rural areas, like when I was playing in the South, you get on a stage that had 120 amp circuit that the refrigerator was on. And,
hell yeah.
and all the standard, wall dimmers and all that stuff. And it made a huge difference just to have something back there. But I got the actual line conditioner, not just the power conditioner, that would take whatever was coming into it and then generate 120 clean. So if that thing sagged, this didn't sag, because a regular just AC filter type thing, the cheap Furman units, if the power goes down there, the power goes down there.
Yeah, and some of those
they're just noise
Furman,
filters.
I'm not going to say Furman, but Furman style things.
Well, they
can
have a range.
they can also cause more problems than they help, because
But
when they blow, I've seen them take out an entire rack because of the way that they're
really?
grounded and wired on the inside.
Oh,
I've seen them ruin everything else
Oh.
in the rack.
That's not good.
No, I'm just I've seen it stop the show and pull the gear off stage. We're done type shit. So
That's not good. But the cheapo ones are really just a filter and a spike protection.
they're a power strip.
Right, but it's got a little noise RF filtering in
Yeah.
it, and it's got peak protection.
Yeah, but if you have a piece of gear that's sensitive and really wants to live at this voltage and it sounds a certain way there, then for sure.
Right, especially if you have really old amps.
Yeah.
Because like an old AC30, when you plug it into modern wall voltage. You can see the B plus on those EL84s go up as high as 400
like Chris Miller,
volts.
Keith Urban's tech. He's got Variacs because of the old amps that are being
that's
used.
right. Old Fenders, old Voxes. The early Marshalls also.
But the other guys, like the other guys, are playing new gear.
Right.
And
doesn't matter.
It's fine.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, they were designed around stuff there. Let's see. There was another good one here. Are most bands like Garbage using in-ears for their monitoring with loops? And are the drummers playing to a specialized click or some mix of backing loops?
Garbage is a bit of an anomaly because they do everything with a silent stage. It's they are actually playing, but for example, starting from the drums out, it is like a D drum kit, but you don't hear the kit. There's a trigger on every drum, and every time you hit the drum, you hear a triggered sound.
Wow.
And the drums are actually, during my time there, the drums were actually filled with styrofoam peanuts. They didn't hardly make any noise. There was enough peanuts in it right up to the head. So if you hit the drum, it still felt like a drum. Didn't touch the peanuts.
You had stick response.
But it still was really quiet. And we had plexiglass kind of orbs over the cymbals. Butch just plays a 4-piece kit. And when in like a ride, a crash, a hat, and a crash.
Yeah,
very
traditional
small. And
trap
just
set.
cymbals, plexiglass over that. And so what he would do is he would play different drum kits during the show by scrolling up a different drum kit for different songs. So we'd have a few different
sample,
kicks, a few different snares. It wasn't crazy, like 4 or 5 of each.
Vocabulary there.
Yeah, exactly. The guitar players were all playing, amp simulator type things, fractal pod type stuff, and that was all direct. Same with the bass. And the tracks were what we already talked about.
So Shirley had it easy on stage.
Sure, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was to make life very easy for Shirley on stage. Everyone was on the ears. If you shut off the PA, all you heard was slightly muffled drums and a person singing into a mic acoustically.
Right.
There's no noise on the stage at all.
Wow.
I mean, everyone's really playing.
I know some other pop acts that do that.
And that's really the best way to do ears. It's like the ears monitors thing is. I see so many people use ears and monitors, and it's like the biggest mistake. You just need everyone to get on the same page, commit to one thing or commit to the other.
Right.
And because
seen that too.
there's so many arrival times, and if you add ears into it, you just create another level of confusion. And
competing.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a great sound on stage with just backline and monitors if everyone kind of cooperates.
Hey, man, I lived on wedges my entire life on the road, and if it done correctly, I think it's second to none.
It's almost like if you're going to do ears, everyone needs to get on the program.
Well, I think ears are just so that you can keep the stage volume down and still hear it, and still get sounds. And there's no, if you got a loud stage and you got monitors.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a loud stage, though, your ears are going to be so loud, you're going to be doing more damage to your ears
That's
than
what
if you
I
just
mean.
had earplugs and a loud wedge.
Right.
I mean,
but if you got stage volumes down, I can't hear the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I did in-ear monitors early on, especially when ears first started.
Yeah, they've come a long way.
I did in-ears for Queensryche on the Empire tour.
Wow.
And that was with the stage. It wasn't very loud.
Oh, really?
We were playing arenas, and there was 1 or 2 412s that were on.
Right.
And I did feedback cues in a wedge, and then it would shut off immediately after the feedback. And those ears were still loud. I mean, my ears are still ringing after the end of each show because there's just the level you had to get them at to compete with the sound of the room and the PA.
Right.
So if anyone tells you to wear ears to save your hearing, that is so untrue.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what I mean. It's only functional if you have a quiet stage.
Yeah. I've seen so many monitor guys who are mixing primarily ears come up to me after the show. It's like my head is devastated because of the volume and tonality of what they have to listen to.
Right.
So
and you get a little more control with it. But let's see, what is your favorite bass drum, Mike?
Oh, wow. I use a combination of things.
'Cause I've heard your mix on especially like McHugh's bass drum, and it's
great drummer with a great drum.
Great drummer with a great drum, but it's a very, huge room. Sounded beautiful.
Thanks. I guess if I were to pick from scratch, I would use a Shure. Is it Beta 91A? It's the 90 with the flat 91 that has the jack right on the mic, whichever one that is, which I think is Beta 91A. Which sounds really different than the Beta 91, trust me.
Yeah.
It's with a high LPR 48. is like the outer mic or like the whole mic, the back mic.
Right.
Run them half and half.
Wow.
You get a lot of click in presence from the Shure, and you get a lot of big bass drum sound from the Heil. That mic's got a lot of low end.
Speaking of Heil,
But there's a lot of other stuff you can use too that sounds great. If the band isn't
yeah,
heavier band,
Right.
I actually kind of like a Beyer M88 is the outer mic. Mm-hmm. But the 91 Beta 91 thing in the bottom of the kick is kind of a constant. It's kind of reliable.
yeah,
I always know what it's going to do.
it's repeatable.
Yeah, very repeatable.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's like if the band was like Cheap Trick kind of band,
Right.
I'd more prefer the 90 or the Beyer M88
88, yeah.
as the outer mic. If
Right.
the band was getting a bit heavier, more like Alice or Velvet Revolver kind of band, I'd prefer the Heil.
Wow.
Yeah.
So speaking of Heil, I'm sure a lot of the guys are curious. What did you do here with our system? Tell us what you brought over and how we set it up.
Oh,
Because Tom just looked at it and went, "Oh, okay, I know what to do."
well, it was based on what I could get for free.
Shh, don't tell
Shh, quiet. It's just listen to the show. I just got these vocal mics. These are actually the same capsules that I use live. You can get these capsules to screw on a wireless. They make a version of this microphone that screws on the wireless. And the reason why I like it live is that it has a lot of high mids. It cuts. It's got. I mean, it's not like what you'd call super sonically pleasing.
And this is what the PR22.
PR22,
Right.
And they make a capsule version called an RC22. But they have a very good cutting vocal presence from about 2 to 3K. Usually you have to temper it there. I temper it with a dynamic EQ, but if the singer starts to get quiet, or more intimate sounding,
Right.
and that compressor lets go in that region, you have that stuff and you have that articulation.
Yeah, right.
Over on the guitar rig, it's one of my favorite dynamic guitar mics, which is a Heil PR30. Or the PR31, it's the same microphone. They just look a little different. The PR31 is just physically
Different
smaller.
capsule, right? Yeah.
No, it's the same exact capsule. It's just
okay.
different housing.
Oh, just the actual
Yeah,
tube.
the 31's more made for toms.
Oh, that's right.
Because
That's
it's
right. That's
smaller,
right.
and the 30 is just a bigger looking microphone. And it basically, it's a good do everything dynamic mic. It's got the mid range of 57, but it definitely has more top end and more bottom end.
Yeah, so it throws a wider net.
Yeah, it's a bit of a 421 meets a 57 kind of vibe.
Man, because I'm getting nothing but compliments ever since you set this up.
Oh, good.
Yeah, even you listened to it and said you liked it.
Yeah, no, I did. I checked it and made sure it monoed up and everything.
Yeah.
And that with the Royer sounds really good.
Yeah, I'm still using my Royer 122V. I like to have the ribbon always in the mix with the guitar because dynamic mic is really fast and literal, whereas the ribbon mic to me always sounds a little slower, a little more elegant.
Yeah, I mean the ribbon.
But neither of them are the whole picture, So you mix them together, you kind of get more of a feeling of what it's like to be in the room.
Yeah, that's what the ribbon does to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
The dynamic gives you the immediacy, the chicka chicka on the guitar, and the ribbon gives you a bit like I'm standing near the cabinet kind of vibe.
What I've noticed about the Heil, and tell me if this is true, but it's just been my perception, with the other famous mic that everyone likes to stick on a guitar amp, this one doesn't overshoot. The Shure mics to me always overshoot. Like you can hear it, like the diaphragm's going.
Oh,
and you get a little smear on the top end from that.
I haven't used Shure mics on a guitar in such a long time.
Yeah.
That I kind of forgot.
Oh yeah, we know 57 has a neat thing, but you can hear it smear on the top end because that diaphragm's just overshooting. Crazy.
57. While it can sound really good on a guitar, it always has a weird kind of phasey top end to me.
Yeah, and that's
sounding.
That's what I'm talking about.
And if you like the sound of the 57 and you want that to go away, use an SM7. My favorite guitar mic from Shure on a guitar is an SM7.
That's a big fat
Which is the
one.
thing you see radio DJs always talking into. That's a great guitar mic.
Yeah.
It's like a 57 that's been corrected.
Yeah, what it wants to be when it grows up.
Yeah, right. And I actually really like that on guitars. The SM7 is a fantastic guitar mic. I would pick. It's also oddly enough, it's and Chris McHugh, the drummer for Keith Urban, and Keith's musical director. I inherited this. And I had no idea of it. Never even thought of it. But it's an awesome hi-hat mic. Who knew?
SM7?
Yeah. So on Chris's kit, we use on the ride cymbal and the hi-hat. We
It's
use.
such a warm, fat sound.
It's a dynamic mic. It's like almost like putting 57s on it.
Just a big one. Wow.
So on the Hat and the Ride, which are two very important things in a mix, we used SM7s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's a good one. Haas Thompson again. Says, what do you consider to be the best way to get a real nice bass sound? Engineers seem to like DI straight out of your bassist, Ricky, but he loves his orange amp that has no DI out the back. Love John Deacon, John Paul Jones bass sound.
I have an answer to this question.
Good taste you have there, Haas.
What I do, and what I always do, is I run two bass DIs. And the one is the DI that we're all familiar with, which is the DI right off the bass. Okay? And then I will take a Palmer speaker simulator box, and not the fancy expensive rack mount one, the $175 little box one, because it sounds great. And I will put that on the speaker output of the bass amp. And that is how I mic the bass amp. And so you then have the sound of the bass amp without any other noise coming down it, because it's a DI. So speaker out of the bass amp into the Palmer PDI-09, it's called the Junction or something. It's the Palmer, the Hughes and Kettner red box.
Yeah.
It's just one of those that sounds good. Okay. We can say that here, right?
We can say anything we want here.
Okay. It's one of those that sounds good.
Right.
And that's what I do. And I do a lot of stuff to it, though, at the console to get it to... The bass is so important, and it gets overlooked, especially in a big room. And bass, contrary to its name, you really don't want a lot of bass on the bass.
It's a bass guitar.
It's a bass guitar.
It's not
And
just
so that
the bottom end.
what I will do is I will make that first DI almost just low end. Use it for low end, and I will primarily get most of the sound off the second DI, and actually at the console I will distort it if I can even more.
Just put some texture on it.
It almost sounds like you've taken the bass and plugged it into a Marshall. And I go for that sound, but I high pass it. I high pass that second sound pretty high, like around 200 cycles. So I let the first DI carry the low end, and I let the second DI carry all the low mids and up.
Yeah.
So the second DI, I mean, there's really nothing, depending on the band, unless you're Korn, there's nothing on the bass, above 3K or really almost above 2K. And accentuated the distorted bass off that second channel. So like on a digital console, I actually run another plugin on it from SPL, which is like a tube plugin, which makes it more distorted. So
I'm so glad you brought up distortion on bass.
Oh my God, it's everything.
How can you play? We make a couple of bass amps, and I do them mostly for artists. Because the artist, what's his name? Oh, I'm blanking on his name now.
What's his name?
Plays with Robert Plant, Byron House. Byron House uses our bass amps. And he calls me and he goes, oh my God, this is so perfect. I'm like, well, thanks, Byron. What is it that you like about it? He goes, it gets a little distortion.
Yeah.
He said, I've spent all the money on these incredible solid state things with blah, 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 and I can't make any of them sound like a bass guitar. It all sounds like I'm playing a keyboard.
You know what I tried to do? I mean, I've actually always done this, even since I was mixing when I was really young. Go get the Cheap Trick record. The first two Cheap Trick
Tom
records.
Peterson's got the best bass sound.
Especially the bass sound on In Color and In Black and White. The one where the good-looking guys are on the motorcycles, right, and the other two guys are on scooters in the back. Just get that record. In my head, what I tried to do live is even really young when I first started, I tried to make the bass sound like it did on that record, which was a Firebird through an Ampeg flip top run, super distorted.
Right. Well, that little B15.
Yeah, and
it was a dirty.
It was actually dirtier than the electric the guitar was.
If you listen, you can go on YouTube and listen to isolated tracks of your favorite bass players. Going back through times, Jamerson, McCartney, blah, 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 blah. There isn't one clean bass track on any of those things.
So to directly answer the person's question, that second bass DI, which I've taken off the bass amp, I do that. I make that sound like that bass is plugged into a guitar amp as much as possible, and then limit it down to about 200 to 3K, so it doesn't sound fizzy. It doesn't really throw any low end that interferes with the other DI.
Right. It lives in its own space.
Right, and then I compress it twice.
So do you generally high pass everything but the bass and the kick? Brad is asking. Hey, Brad.
Yep.
What's up, man?
Very observant. Is that Brad asking that question?
It's Brad.
Yeah, that's very observant, Brad. The answer to that question is yes. About the only thing that really isn't is maybe the floor tom is not as open like the kick drum would be. I mean, as far as high passing goes, but live, things are high passed really high, like way higher than you do in the studio. I mean, it's very PA related and how the response of the PA is.
Your room.
I mean, I'm also like generally like more in the last 15 years been using giant PAs where there's a lot of inherent low end.
What's the average power on the PA you run?
You mean watts wise?
Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny? Like I never knew, and like this is just like a stupid road joke. There's always like, you know, the dude that comes up to you after the show, like who says one of those things, you know, like, dude, how many watts you pushing? Whatever, and you're like,
bro,
dude, I love to have that in my car, and you're like,
really?
right? Okay, you try to smile, try to be nice, but so one day. And it was actually this summer, I think, me and the system engineer, we tried to figure out.
Right.
We don't know what watts the PA is. Like,
I'm just curious.
No, so we actually, I couldn't answer that question except for this summer.
Yeah.
We figured it out.
Right.
It was 900,000.
900,000 watts.
Yeah, it was just a shot. I called the
I mean,
sound
that's
company.
more than double what I use in bars around here.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
And so like I called the sound company and I was like, with a dead serious voice, I'm like, guys, we've got a problem here.
Yeah.
We got to get this to 7 figures.
I'm 100 watts shy.
I'm 100K shy of a million
I'm
here.
100,000 watts shy. So I'm having a complex here.
I mean, are you using a 900,000 watts? No, it's headroom.
It's headroom, right?
Headroom.
Clean headroom.
You're probably, I mean, really, during the show, you're probably using a third of what you have available to you.
Right.
And
Sure.
and that's a third if I'm like putting the hammer down.
It's like driving a sports car. You're driving 60, but go 180.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's okay. But it feels good driving 60.
Well, you have it.
Right.
You know, so it's like you're not worried. You've taken that worry out of the aspect of mixing that you're run out of headroom on the,
900,000.
Yeah, it was 900,000 and change.
That's incredible. Damn, I love that. Andre is asking, do you run into time alignment issues with the two DIs?
Not if everything's analog. Not if you're right off the bass and then right off the amp. And because that won't be, because the amp will be after. I mean, there's, like, say, for example, you had a digital wireless, the amp would still be after it. Mm-hmm. So everything would still be after it. Where we did have a problem, like, for example, is with the band Garbage, the bass amp was the line, the line 6 pod for bass, the gray one.
Yeah.
It's latent as hell.
Oh, right.
So we did have a problem with that. And on that line 6 bass for pod, there is a time compensated 3-pin output. So they thought about it.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, the audio quality of that 3-pin output is not special.
Not ideal.
And so what we did is, because we were using digital consoles, we recorded both bass tracks into Pro Tools, found out the time difference, and on the console I delayed the DI back to the pod. But I mean, you're talking about like 1.3 milliseconds.
Yeah.
Nothing you notice when
Almost imperceptible.
yeah.
Right.
But yes, do you have to time align them? Absolutely, you have to time align them. But one of the quick fixes is doing what I told you earlier, is you high pass that second bass, because where you notice the collision and time alignment is in the low end. You know what I mean? In the mid-range, it just sort of shifts the mid-range focus a little bit. If you can get it right, great. Sometimes it sounds good to intentionally put it 180 out of phase.
So you can scoop certain things.
I mixed way back in the day, when I mixed the Infectious Grooves and Robert Trujillo was a bass player, I actually high passed the second bass channel and then put it out of phase. For some reason, it sounded really cool.
Just sounded right.
The way he played.
Yeah.
Which is real slappy.
Brad's asking, do you compress guitars through the front of house?
Negative. No guitar compression unless the guitar player is playing electric clean or acoustic all of the time.
Yeah. Now, what kind of compression are you focusing on? Or gain recovery or peak limiting? Or?
Both. I will use like a channel type compressor for sonics, like a 3-to-1 ratio. It's kind of slowish, not super slow, but medium attack, medium release, to even out the guitar, For this is not clean in guitars and acoustic guitars only. I'm talking about. I don't ever compress the starter guitar. And then I'm probably on the guitar group. I have a peak limiter that it'll just stop overshoot if pull the cable, whack something on the guitar, whatever. It will go, nope, you're done. But it's not really part of the sound. so much, it'll just like a protection sort of thing. Because if you pull a cable when you got that much power,
Yeah.
it can make a sound.
You know, at 900,000 watts, yeah, it's one thing. But if you had the 7 figures, then that would be really dangerous.
Then I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, at all. But I don't compress to start a guitar at all. Most people don't know, or like distortion is mass compression. It's like when you distort something, it's compressed as
You're
it's
chopping
ever
the top
gonna,
of the wave off.
Yeah, I mean you are compressing it to death. So I high pass the electric guitar for sure. But if the guitar tone is good off the stage, I do surprisingly little to it.
Yeah.
And high pass it. And
I was going to say, what, if anything, do you do other than just try to transfer?
well, it all depends on the tone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Do you do any EQing? Or?
well, it depends on the tone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest thing, do it quickly. I mean,
Like with Danny Rader, who uses our stuff.
Uh-huh.
What do you have to do to treat like his producer and his Soho?
I have Palmers on his output, and I do the same thing I do with every Palmer. Actually, one thing less. All I do is it's real easy. I mean, you get the guy to play, and I just look at my analyzer, and I know there's something in the high mid that has to go away. You can find it with your ear, but I can just look with my eyes too and go, 2.2K, it's a little hard.
Yeah.
And then I take a little 2.2K out, and that's the end of it.
Oh.
And if he was playing metal,
Right.
I usually put a high shelf boost in above 5K, so you get the
Right.
to come out really clearly.
Yeah.
And then high pass it. With a DI on the electric guitar, you get a lot of low end. I pass it higher than you'd probably think. A lot of times 160.
Wow.
You know, with that much
That is
PA.
high, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if you don't, it sounds like, you know, it's
Yeah, a little
awful.
bloopy.
This is high pass and temper the. Generally, with any electric guitar, even with like mic, whatever you, it's kind of flat, a little low, little dip down in the high mid, and I might get a little air up going in the high shelf area, and that's pretty much an electric guitar.
Yeah.
If the guitar sound is good, if you're not going to battle with it.
Yeah,
If
right.
it's something horrible, I mean, you have to fix that at the stage.
Yeah, you just got to make the best
You
of
can't.
it. Yeah.
At the other end of the snake, you can't make bad things good. You can only make bad things louder.
Yeah, fair enough. Wow, very cool. Very good questions. So, you know, I'm sure there's a few things that a lot of guys would like to know about a guy that runs full front of house. Like, what is your day like or what's your week like when you're setting up for a show at the Staples Center here in Los Angeles? I mean, how much work and preparation goes into getting that all nailed and correct? And how
Well, it
much
depends
time?
if it's in the middle of a tour, you're talking about a one-off.
Yeah,
I mean, if it's in the middle of a tour, it's just another day.
yeah.
So, you know.
But when does your day start and when does your day end?
My day?
Yeah.
Being the poofy front of house guy,
Poofy.
my day starts not crazy early.
But you got minions who are
I don't call them that, but
I know.
yeah, but I think they are.
right. We'll just call them onions.
No, like
yeah.
rigging will start early in the morning. The guys who hang everything from the roof.
Yeah.
You know, 7 in the morning and stuff. Audio start coming in the door probably about 10 in the morning, 9:30, 10 in the morning. You know, I go out and set up front of house in my gear. Around then-ish.
Well, that's not horrible.
Yeah, but I mean, you also work till midnight, 1 in the morning.
Yeah, I would say you work till later than that.
so,
A lot of times, right? Yeah.
So I try to go in as late as I can. So by showtime comes, I'm still not like super sleepy and bored. And
well, you got to be fresh for
you
the
got
show.
to be pretty sharp for the show.
Yeah.
Because it's all mental mixing. So
Yeah.
you know, and at the same time as that's going on, the PA's going up in the air. We can be line checked. If we're in the middle of a tour and we got our flow on, we can be line checked and ready by 1 to 2 o'clock.
Wow.
We be done. If the band's not going to come in and sound check at whatever o'clock, audio can be done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon and not do anything till showtime. Of course, you know, the audio guys from the Sun Company do have to deal with support acts.
Yeah.
You know, I don't go in for that stuff, but
Peasants.
support acts. I mean, at that time, I'm generally pooping in their dressing room. But
we're spiking their punch, if you know what I mean.
So, you know,
Tom's being such a gentleman.
It's
here.
not.
This is
I'm
great.
trying to. You know,
This is all just humor,
with
guys.
the
It's
with a
okay.
properly staffed tour, it's fine. You know what I mean? That's why it's properly staffed. Because if you didn't do that and you're out for a year, everyone would be destroyed after a week.
Right.
You know? So everyone does what they do.
Not pulling 18,
You know?
20-hour days.
Right. So like the guys that are in there early setting stuff up aren't operating during the show.
Right.
They kind of have the show off.
Right.
You know, so once like
They get to sleep in the truck.
yeah,
until
for
the show's
example,
over.
like if you're a rigger, you know, you're working hard, man, 6 to 10 in the morning, but you don't start working again till probably 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, you can go home, take a nap.
I mean, well, home being the bus.
Home, that's
but,
what I mean.
Yeah.
You can go to your rack and take a nap.
Yeah. So being, you know, when you're in the groove on tour on the road, that's not hard. I mean, I don't think it's hard. It's what's tougher is the first day, or you're doing one-offs, because one-offs are almost like it's the first day every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's always
New
just,
room, new ergonomics.
That's always
the
like
whole
a
thing.
mess right to doors. You know.
So Brad is in here. We got a couple of good questions here. How do you like to capture acoustic guitars?
Well, I mean, they're practically live. I mean, you gotta remember, man, I'm giving you answers from stuff that's like a pretty high volume, kind of biggest shows. And, you know, a lot of guys show up like with a guitar that it has like the DI and the mic built in. You can't even use the mic. I mean, it's just howls and like you can't even. Like I remember, like for example, like if I were to give an example, I did the Alice in Chains. They remember that back in MTV Unplugged, they were kind of a big unplugged band.
Oh yeah, they had a big.
Yeah, so Alice does like an unplugged show, and as its own entity, like to do an entire gig unplugged, like in a smaller size venue, right? And so I did my first. I had been working for Alice forever, 2 years maybe at that point, and so I did my first like Alice unplugged show, and I think it was downstairs at the Eagles in Milwaukee, and I had no idea the crowd was going to be as loud as if it was like a true Alice in Chains gig. Mm-hmm. So like
with acoustic guitars.
With acoustic guitars, dude, when it kicked off, you couldn't even hear it. It was like, oh my god,
what happened?
What like you couldn't hear it. You know what I mean? Like, so I had to at that moment just do damage control to get it going. But then I learned really quick. I had to line check and prep the acoustics to be so loud to get the show to be right.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, acoustics are they're like the hardest thing in the world to do live. It's almost like you to get the acoustic loud enough, you're turning it into such not an acoustic guitar.
Yep.
It's like, can we just play electric clean? Because that's what we're doing.
Right.
A
lot of guys just have those transducers on their electrics.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, and those actually sound way better.
In a big, huge place, it sounds like exactly.
Yeah, it sounds exactly.
It miking up and taming an acoustic.
It
guitar.
sounds better.
Yeah,
it honestly does.
Let's put that amp on standby. And I'll plug this guitar here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you definitely need to have like a pickup in your bridge. Yeah. It has to be DI'd. It has to be. You need the, what do they call it? The muffler thingy that goes
just the mute
in there.
Sound hole.
Yeah,
mute.
everything you do to get that thing not to howl.
Right.
And then
sit back and relax.
And then you treat it. I'm just trying to stay on the mic a bit. And then you treat it. You treat it like I told you earlier with the clean guitar.
Right.
A little bit of compression, and the EQ on acoustics can be really weird because it's so based on how that guitar sounds out of that DI, which is wildly different.
Could be, yeah.
There's some curves you end up with on acoustic guitars based on how that acoustic sounds that are crazy.
Yeah.
You just got to do what you got to do to make it sound right. The worst thing that happens generally is the guys that have will show up with like kind of those preamp acoustic things that have settings on them
and its own little EQ.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So you'll EQ it how you need it, and then he goes.
Yeah, it's just bad. It's bad all around because the quality of that is really bad. If you just
you got a circuit board that.
Yeah, and if you have an engineer and like some decent gear, just plug it into a DI and let him do it. You know what I mean?
Right. That's his job.
Yeah.
That's why
it's hard. It's like just give an opinion about someone who just playing in the pub to the the plastic JBL Eons, and that's what you got to do is a completely different answer than doing it at a gig. Or,
exactly.
It's kind of a different thing.
Well, that's crazy. So Andre was asking, which Palmers do you use on guitar?
I use them all. I use the PDI 09, the little box one, which everybody can afford. And I also use the fancy, expensive rack mount ones.
So that PDI-09 is fine with bass or guitar.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
Anything,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Careful, you shut that off.
Oh, yeah.
It depends. You'd be really surprised. There's a very, very famous guitar player.
What's his name rhyme with?
He's a very famous guitar player. And you would definitely recognize him by his hat. And,
okay. So Tiny Tim.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I should have said that on the air.
Weird Al.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
Dion.
we were on his electric sound. He's the kind of guy that, a very traditional player. He loves the Les Paul and a Marshall, and that's all I need him to love because he's
a
really
rock and roller.
really good at it.
Yeah,
right. But he's also the kind of guy that could only have a 57 on his guitar, right?
Oh.
And so he was, hearing a little bit with his eyes.
Sure.
And fine, that, and that's cool.
Makes you feel good.
But also his guitar tech was also the kind of guy that was really cool, and he was definitely there to make the whole thing as good as possible.
Yeah.
So
you can just grab that and sit back.
oh, I'm fine.
Okay. Make yourself at home.
We were well into the tour, and I had put way back in rehearsals months before. I put a rack mount Palmer in the guitar rig on the heavy sounding amp, and one of the little Palmers on the clean sounding amp.
Mm-hmm.
You played a heavy amp and a clean amp.
And you got what you needed.
And I got way what I needed. And
That's
the
great.
monitor guy really did too. And here's what happened. And the 57s were still up there. And so we were at possibly the last show of the tour. It was well into it.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, this happened after the end of tour party. And he's the kind of guy who's a very nice guy, but he doesn't say much. He's very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually came up to the mic during sound check, and he goes, "Hey, I just want to tell you guys, he goes, I love the way my guitar sounds when we're playing live, and the monitors just when I'm standing out in front of the PA playing." He goes, "It's just so clear, and it's just exactly great. I just wanted to say thanks." He's just being super nice and being thankful,
Mm-hmm.
The monitor guy comes out, takes all the mics that are on Z-bars on his cabinet and pulls them out and lets them drop to the floor. Because at that point, they were plugged into the carpet. Okay? And he just looks around at us.
Uh-huh.
And the monitor guy just nods his head at him and said, "Play." Mm-hmm. And he played and went, "You got me."
Yeah, I'll be damned.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Hoss Thompson is asking, are there specific guitar speakers or sizes of speakers that just hate mics or love mics?
No, it just has to do with the sound overall.
Right. Sure.
If whatever the guy's got going on, if it's good, it's good.
Sure. Good is good.
If
That's
it's
true.
Crap, it's crap.
How do you feel about Axe Effects Kemper versus real amps for live?
Interesting.
Andre asks. Andre
Question.
McCara, who's a customer and a friend.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of this kind of recently-ish.
That Axe Effects is getting a lot of traction, isn't it?
They all do.
Yeah.
Here's what I found. This is my opinion and my experience. And this happened relatively recently. We had a guitar player who was playing through, it was either an old 4-input Plexi or an old JCM 800. And everything was fine. And then for logistics region, or whatever reason, we ended up switching over to, I think, a Fractal.
Yeah.
And it sounded great. However, during the show when the whole band was playing, it was like I couldn't hear him anymore. Like,
Lost his presence.
Guitar just lost something.
Yeah.
Even though you'd stand there, and I swear to God, you could A-B it with the amp and the PA, and it sounded perfect and perfect.
Yeah.
But when the whole band was playing, I would lose his guitar. Then when he went back to the amp,
what I feel about it.
it was back again.
Right.
So you would literally listen to it, and it sounded identical. Just by itself. But when the whole band was playing, I would lose the instrument.
Well, I've read a couple of articles about this phenomenon because it seems to happen a lot. I experience the same thing. I listen to these things and go, it sounds really good.
Yeah.
Then you hear it in a band situation, and it's clouded for some reason.
It's and even to the point where I'd be turning like I remember saying to him after a couple days ago, I'm like, man, I'm running your guitar like 2 or 3 dB hotter now. And I still feel like I don't hear it like I was hearing it before.
And there's a thing...
2 or 3 dB lot in that situation is a lot.
Tube amps actually generate frequencies and things that are above and below human hearing. And there's reactions that happen, and there's ultra-high harmonics and low harmonics that happen that are above and below human hearing. But with humans, just because it's out of human hearing range doesn't mean that you cannot perceive it. That we have, sound hits our body mainly through our eardrum, but also our sinus cavities and our bones and all these sorts of things. So when you have a digital model of a guitar or anything, it's not generating those ultra high and ultra low harmonics.
It was like, it's hard to put into words.
Yeah, no, but I read an article where they actually quantified this, that human beings, like deaf people, can sense sound by not using their ears. We sense sound from vibrations that hit our bone structure, that hit our sinus cavities. You feel it in your feet when a truck goes by.
Yeah.
You know that's a sound wave that you're feeling, even though you cannot hear the truck. You're perceiving the truck, like that diesel that's idling outside right now. We can feel that.
Yeah.
And if we had no hearing whatsoever, we'd still sense that sound wave that's coming. So when you're listening to a digital model, it's not doing that. And that's where it goes away.
Yeah.
So you can say, well, technically it sounds exactly the same, but you don't perceive it the same way.
It's like in the mix, it sounds like there was no space around it. Like it wasn't alive anymore or something. But when you heard it by itself, you could not tell them apart. It's a really strange phenomena.
Yeah.
But if you have a whole band that is playing like that, and your sounds and models are good, you don't notice it as much because sort of everybody's in that pocket.
Right.
It's...
So Brad asked, does that effect happen on a record as well? Absolutely. I mean, it's just like...
For sure.
Haas Thompson said Rupert Neve was talking about this and said the same thing. Maybe that's where I read it. But I'm obviously... I've had 3 nights of 4 hours of sleep, so I'm a little stupid today. But, for example, stand in the room with a 100-watt Marshall. It's very different than on any record I've ever heard. I've never heard a record accurately catch the concussion of what it's like to be in front of. I hear a lot of great recordings of 100-watt Marshalls that sound fantastic, but you're standing in that room with a 100-watt Friedman amp, and you hit a big fat F chord on it. That thing punches you in the gut.
Sure does.
You're not going to get that on a recording.
Yeah.
Because you feel it in your bones, you feel it in your muscles, you feel the air move up your nose.
Yeah.
You don't get that in a recording. So we perceive sound way beyond just our eardrums.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff below 200 cycles we don't hear.
Yeah, but you're aware of it.
It just comes through your bones.
So you sense it. Every organ, every inch of your body senses it. So, Namubu Lai, it's Cliff. Hey, Cliff said I met a deaf person who enjoyed listening to loud music. Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Neve was talking about it in conjunction with PA amps and the higher frequencies. Yeah, now one of the preamps that I have here is Avitas's 1073, and there's a 28K switch on there. Now humans can't hear anywhere near 28K.
Yeah.
And but he goes, it just gives it breadth. And he goes, look, you punch in and out. I can't hear a frequency difference, but I like the 28K.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things about live mixing too is that air is you end up scooping out a lot of high mids because it hurts.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff 1K between 1K and about 4K. That stuff's painful at a gig, and you end up really tempering that stuff a lot. And one thing you can do to give stuff still high end and openness is that stuff you can't hear. Is that all that stuff above 10K?
Right.
I rely a lot on that to give it a lot of energy and a lot of smoothness. It gives you the high end back.
Right.
But not in an area that doesn't bother you.
But so you can sense it. Hey, John. How are you? Come on in. Hey, we're just about ready to wrap up the show. You want to say hello?
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Shanks. Obviously, we've gotten into casual mode here.
It's really... Okay, look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Nice to see
That looks
you.
like the guy that stole my car.
Which one? The guy with the hat?
Yeah, the guy with the hat. Took my Camaro. What are you guys
Not
talking
the one
about?
that was in your garage.
It's still in my garage.
Okay, good.
What are you guys talking about?
Do you know Tom Abraham?
Nice to meet
So
you.
you probably met Tommy worked with Keith.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's front of house guy with Keith. John Shanks, Tom Abraham. Tom came over and helped us get the show rigged up for better sound. He worked with Heil and got us some mics, and he came and wired everything up, and I've got 2 levels of compression, and it sounds better, and we're miking better, and blah, 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 blah. And
Someone's calling you. Look at it. You have a caller.
oh, yeah. Well, I have Steve on line 6.
So are you actually talking about anything specific?
Dr. Johnny
We've
Fever.
been
mostly.
taking a lot of questions from the chat room about live sound and, helping guys do their own thing and what Tom likes for different things. And
That's interesting.
we were just having a weird discussion about like digital modeling stuff. Tom was saying that, in a live situation when a guy is running a whatever product X versus an amp, it's all really good. But the minute the live amp goes away, he just can't get that out of the mix. Like it loses its presence.
I agree with
and
that.
clarity. We were just discussing. I read an article. I can't remember who wrote it.
I'll give you 2 examples.
Yeah.
One is...
Come over here where we can get you on the mic.
Here, I'll come over.
Sit in the middle.
We'll make a Dan sandwich.
Okay. Like, for example, I saw Muse at Coachella a couple years ago, and Matt's playing Diesels. It sounded incredible. And last year, he was not. He was playing one of those,
Whatever. Product X.
the 2 products that we're probably
Yeah.
talking about.
Right.
And emotionally, I could feel it in the audience. And now sometimes those grab and go things, or this is just my opinion, and I own one of them. And one of them, the thing I like about it is that if I'm have to fly somewhere really quickly, and I'll throw it in my suitcase, and then I can cover it.
Very functional.
But they're with both of them, and I've never said this. There's some issues that I notice that when you model something or you're going after, it's utilitarian. It's pretty good. It's not.
I think that's well said.
It's not. It's not. And what I've noticed in one of them is that you have to print brighter, and you have to roll out a little of the woofiness in the low end, because when it comes back,
It will come back.
you'll get you'll kind of, it'll balance out the brightness that,
Sure.
that it'll compensate if you go, my point is you go brighter when you record and take a little, and then that'll compensate, so you'll get back that woofiness.
Sure.
And you'll lose some of the high end, so it'll
But
basically
it brings it back to normal.
somewhat.
Right.
So that's that helps.
That's cool.
And but I definitely feel an emotional loss when I hear it.
What we were talking about was, the human body. I read an article, and I think Rupert Neve was part of it. These guys read it, but he was saying that, deaf people can sense sound.
Yeah.
We sense sound like subharmonics and high harmonics with our bones and our flesh and our sinus cavities, especially. Like when we were talking about it, there's a diesel.
That's
out
why
there.
great singers, they're this right up here starts to vibrate.
Yeah.
There's a tickle.
You got to run. Okay,
go.
give me 2 minutes. But like with this diesel was.
I have to go.
Don't go, you guys! I can't be
I'm
alone.
here to grab.
Don't be alone.
I have issues.
So lonely.
But there's a diesel out there idling, and we're aware of the sound.
Not the
Not
amp.
right now.
Truck.
A diesel truck. It mates. Yeah, it mates.
Diesel without a Z.
And so that's what's lost in the digital domain is that you don't get those really
Transient.
subhuman hearing and above.
Well, that gets
hearing
into a
things.
whole other conversation. It was about MP3s and
Yeah.
the compression and
Right.
because
It's
you're
gone.
missing out on the trans. It's like when I'm working with an artist, and every once in a while, when we finally get the song at a mix at a certain place, I go, this is the best it's ever gonna sound.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, no, because it's gonna get down to 16-bit on a CD,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be an MP3.
and I'm going to listen to it on this.
Yeah, and it's going to be
Right.
MP3, and so all the transients from the top end and a bit of the low end go away. So, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, yes, WAV files.
But having said that, these things are getting really good.
they're getting good, but there is an emotional.
not great
It's better than sometimes these modeling things, because I know friends of mine who record and they'll use amp stuff in the box and separate from those other separate hardware
software-based
stuff.
stuff. Yeah.
So, and it's for certain things, certain type of pop music. It's almost like its own sound.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
It's a valid thing. Yeah.
I've done stuff where I've used I have the old rack-mounted Rockman. There was one that was the best one because it wasn't just the generic one. It had all his presets in,
Right.
like 100 presets, and all the EQs. And so I've done that where I've taken that signal and mixed it with like a JC, like a 120, or you mix it for that kind of arpeggiated Jeff Linney, Tom Petty sound. It's actually a really cool thing because it does this stereo imaging. So there's an example where you're mixing something. There's a couple bands that are out there and famous guitar players that they have amps on stage, and you think
that's not what you're hearing.
You're hearing a JMP1, and they have a rack of those Marshall. And I used to do it with Melissa back in the day where I would have my heads going, but just because I tended to be that guy where I ran all my effects, and guys like you hated that because it was a very wet, process signal.
Right.
And so he knew that he always had the JMP if he was losing a little of the front.
Yeah.
And he could just slide
Something
it in.
dry to go to.
So, yeah. How can you even read those questions?
I'm great at a distance. I can't read or watch.
Yeah.
I don't even wear a watch anymore. I can't read
Why
it.
does it say stop talking? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, shut up, Dan.
Who's the guy with the hat?
Say, hey, John, I was looking at your Les Paul. It looks the business. Haas is one of our customers. Is an artist in England. Your custom shop,
the Collector's Choice one.
Yeah.
I think it was Collector's Choice 7.
And that's, like we said, that's a guitar that I know, right? We bought it and we're at that.
It was that 1960
Santa Monica.
It was a 1960 Les Paul. I bought it from
Jay Rosen. Right?
Jay Rosen.
Yeah.
It belonged.
Do you want to keep those
Mick Mars.
What's
cans?
You don't need them?
Not right away. I can come back.
Well, we'll see you soon, right? Yeah, okay.
You got my amp.
So
this would be awesome if you just start dismantling everything.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, see you later.
That's how you know the show is almost over.
Later, assholes.
The Dire Straits used to finish their show by starting Loadout.
Yeah.
They would play the song he did for the movie soundtrack. Whatever. It was an instrumental song. And they would take the front line, they would put the house lights on, they'd take the front line mics down. Like, the crew would start taking apart the show to the point, everything would start coming down to the point they could still play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was kind of cool.
Huh.
Well, so I know both you guys got to go, so maybe we should wrap up. John, any news? You working on anything fun?
I'm working on a band called Cardi Knox. Cardiknox. I got them signed to Warner Brothers. I have we have a production deal with them, and we're almost finished with the record. I think we actually just wrote the single this week, which is fantastic.
Excellent.
We beat the single that I thought we had.
Are you still doing 18, 20-hour days?
I'm going to go there. I'm playing hooky a little today.
Oh, are you?
So, I know they're in a meeting, so I'll get there probably around 2:33, and I'll be there till midnight probably.
Yeah.
We're
not
just
horrible.
Here's the thing. The trick is I'm turning in basically the album before Christmas.
Oh. Yeah.
And so everyone over the holidays can, listen to all the material, go through it, make notes, and then we'll address those in January. And it's helpful to the company because then promotion and marketing and all formats, and so everyone can get on the same page. And sometimes over the holidays, you finally have that quiet time to just go off and to actually listen to a record because
settle a bit,
because you don't want to sit there and talk to your aunt or uncle. People are like, I need to listen to this.
Yeah, I'd love to eat some more turkey, but
so that's what I'm doing, and there's a group I'm probably gonna do in February, which is pretty cool, and that's what's going on.
Nice. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Anybody want to buy a telly? It's on eBay right now. A Paisley telly. What else am I saying?
Oh, nice. Well, I know, Tom, you got to go. So a lot of guys are on here going, Tom, thanks, you've been a real help. And I can't thank you enough. John, nice surprise.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming. You got to actually run out the door.
No specific questions? That's it. Give me one
specific
question.
You can stay if you want.
Oh.
Tom's just got a bolt.
I got to go. Bye.
You guys want to pick John's brain for 5 or 10 minutes?
Where's our buddy, Mr.
He's down at the factory.
Oh, shit, right.
Yeah, Wednesday's the day. It's probably because I'm here. He picks Wednesday to get the hell out.
All right.
Hey, hang on 1 second.
So now I could just take over the show. I thought he'd never leave.
The John Shanks show.
So.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
I'll be in Vegas till Sunday.
Okay, we'll talk.
Questions. All right. I've known Dan a long time.
Oh, no, he's telling stuff like that.
You know, I remember when 65 amps was just a twinkle in his eye.
I remember when it was 62 amps.
That's right. He was saving up for the other three for the amp. Anyway, let's see. Haas Thompson. That's.
Well, you can come back anytime.
Yeah.
I mean that
I
sincerely.
just have to get driving.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
So
Okay.
I'm out.
Nice shirt.
Thank you.
Dan.
All right, John. Well, it's a good
I
way
love
to
you.
wrap up the show.
It is a good
Nice to
way.
see you, man. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah.
And
I was actually coming to grab all my amps. So.
do you need you got stuff you got to get out?
No, it was just one little thing to see if he had finished working on.
Is it that Fender?
Yeah, that.
I think it's done. I think
Bandmaster?
Yeah, I think he was working on it.
Really?
Yeah. Plug it in and see if you want. But.
It's lovely being part owner of the company.
Yeah.
You can't even get service on it.
Right. Love to help
There's
you
no
out.
preferential treatment here, just so you know.
Well, it's the old thing like the cobbler's kid has no shoes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Great to see you, John.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Right on. And Hanukkah Shalom as well.
Shalom, Kwanzaa, Ramadan,
Yeah.
Papa Dom.
See you soon, brother. Take care. All right. Oh, John, any new plugins you're excited about?
Yeah, you know what I like? I like that Waves ADR plugin.
Waves ADR plugin,
I
he
think it was,
says.
that was called audio. It's the Beatles plugin, where it does that. It's that great double tracky.
ADT?
Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah, the ADT.
Yeah.
Automatic double tracking.
Love it.
Yeah, that's the Jeff Emmerich thing.
Yeah, love it. We've been using that.
Ooh, and I'm such a Beatles queer. That sounds
There's
good.
an EQ I just bought last night. I can't remember anything. So.
All right.
So that happens to me in certain age.
I'm with you, brother. All right, take care, man. Well, what do you think, fellas? Got it. Great plug-in, Andre says. Very cool. So, yeah, we didn't get to play any guitar or anything today. I have the little whiskey here, but kind of just shut it down because we had such a good conversation. Good conversation. Oh, I got the guy from Tom Petty's band's calling me. I'll have to call him back. What's that, bud? Any questions? No, I think that was it. That was because you left. If you stay, you'll get questions all day. John's yelling at me from down the hall. I still want a lower powered Shankenstein amp. Actually, yeah, we might be able to do that. But anyway, what do you think, fellas? Kind of weird. I'm like all disheveled and crazy today, and Tom Abraham came in and did all this work and helped me set this gear up, and he actually gave me this shirt because the shirt that I was wearing was really inappropriate for the show. So I didn't have time to go home and like clean up. I had to take my kids to school and then went to a meeting, and I barely made it in time, and my Japanese distributor was here this morning, and it was just crazy. So, but it turned out to be very fun. Tom's an amazing wealth of information, don't you think? And he wants to come back more, and he's really interested in sort of sharing the secrets, the stuff that, you know, guys know. That hopefully can relieve some of the ambiguity of what it's like to do live sound and can help you make yourself better. Haas Thompson says, what an awesome show, Dan. Really cheered me up after a shitty day. Oh, thanks, Haas. That's great, man. I'm sorry you had a bad day, dude. Earl says, I second that, Haas. The show is always involving and makes you forget the day, man. Oh, that's great. Well, look, look up Tom Abraham. I think he's on Facebook as Thomas, his middle initial, Abraham. The guy is one of the gods of live sound. I can't tell you how lucky we were to have him on here today. And Tom, when you're watching the replay, thank you again, brother. I can't. That was amazing. And then he has these incredible heavy isolation. They're called extreme isolation headphones that he brought in to help me get the mix better here. And then he just leaves them. It's insane. I don't know how I've earned this, but it's really fun. And then of course, yeah, John Shanks walks in. So we need to have John back on the show for a full hour so we can just sit and talk. This guy knows everybody, works with unbelievable people. We're very lucky to be here. He's also a third owner of Tone Merchants. I don't know if he's a third, but he's maybe more than that. But so anyway, you get the idea. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off myself. It's 1:40 here on the West Coast. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we go? John, producer, guitarist, songwriter. Look up John Shanks on AllMusic. I think you'll be stunned at the work that he's done. And then there's johnshanks.net. You can check, and he's got quite a wealth of information on there too. But the record count is getting insane. It's over 50 million records with his name on them. So, Morning Sausage Man, best handle on the show right now. Fantastic show, Dan. Learn more in an hour and a half with you and your friends and in months of reading. Wow, thank you. That's great. That's great. So one of the things I want to talk about is, I'm working with Namubu, and we're getting this going. So right now, I have to download the file for the show and edit it up and then re-upload it. And sometimes it takes a while. So bear with me. I'm usually going to have the show posted a day or two after it happens. And if my schedule is busier than normal, sometimes it'll be 3 or 4 days. We're working towards that not being the case. We're working to be where it's going to be instant. So as soon as we're done recording, boom, you can click back and see the archive of my shows right on my profile. But that might take a few weeks. It's the holidays, and I got NAMM coming up and blah, 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 blah. So please bear with us, but I appreciate you guys coming over. And I try to get these up on YouTube, definitely, and then I just plaster them all over social media as well. So good show. Live sound is a tricky beast. Yes, it is. And I'll try to get this one up quickly because I know this is sort of an important show. But anyway, so if there's nothing else pressing, I'm going to go ahead and take off and get a bite. So I'll give you a quick few seconds here. I'm going to call last call. Yes? No? Marc Majot, thank you, buddy. Bon appetit. Merci beaucoup, Andre. All right, guys. I'm going to take that as we're all good. So, Merry Christmas. That's right. I might do a show next week. I'm not sure. Can't say for sure. Thursday is Christmas Eve. It might be tough. But anyway, I love you fellas. Worst case is we'll talk right at New Year's. New Year's Eve show would be fun. Maybe we should have a New Year's Eve party here. What do you think? That'd be a good idea? Yeah, I think so. I think we should do that. Anyway, I sincerely appreciate you guys. I appreciate your time. I'm honored that you'd spend it with me. And maybe we'll talk real soon. And sincere best. Take care.